how do you build primal branding in this environment where the rituals are different, as you as you noted, and how does that put the juxtaposition of these new startup brands and these legacy brands trying to sort of survive and coexist?
Yeah, well, whether you're a legacy brand that's been around for 100 years or a new startup, you have to create a story. It's really about taking something that's essentially starts out as meaningless and making it meaningful, okay? And then, and we do that through story. And so we have to tweak our story and to make ourselves meaningful to this new audience. And it's also about, the interesting thing about Uber and startups and so forth is that there's some statistic out there that by 2025, 50%, I just heard this in a meeting last week, by 2025, 50% of people in the US will be basically working for themselves in the gig economy. And so it's going to become essential for those people who are suddenly going to become entrepreneurs. They're not going to get a job. And they're going to have maybe 1, 2, 3 different sources of income. So how do you build those income streams? And you do that by creating a storyline that attracts people to you. And it's all about, boils down to preference. So when I can make you feel better about me rather than someone else in terms of my story, that's called preference, and that's what creates the sale. No matter if you're, no matter if you're Johnson & Johnson or an entrepreneur.
Can you talk a little bit about what primal branding has to do in this age where you don't control your own story?
Well, actually, I would differ with that. You control your story, but you don't necessarily control the portal or the pipe for that story. And so but it still is about building story. And so if you can tell people where you're from, what you're about, and on, and help them identify you and identify what you're not and never want to become, and clearly set that storyline in motion, then you can distribute that over all the social, digital, and traditional media. And so it's really a flat ecosystem today. And the bad news for some marketers is that their $3 million Super Bowl spot is no more meaningful to end users than someone's blog or consumer rating, right? And so it's just a part of that whole swirl. And so if you want to spend the $3 million, fine, that's your decision. But there are these other things here that are equally as important. And as we said earlier today, when people ask about a new product or look for a new product, where do they go? They go to the consumer reviews. How many stars do you have, right? And so that's become really people pay more attention to their peers and what their peers have to say about your product than they do about what you're saying about your product yourself. The opportunity for marketers today is to kind of feed those pipelines and give their advocates, their zealots, their strongest believers, kind of the script for what to say. And it's because they're the people that are going to come and defend you when naysayers or trolls come in, right? And so the important thing is to realize that people are going to talk about you no matter what. And you might not like what they say. So you're best off to develop what we call a strategic brand narrative, which strategically points out all of the points of that get to advocacy, that lead to advocacy. So what we do oftentimes is we find out, okay, what's sticky about us for our zealots, and what are the friction points or pain points that are keeping potential zealots away, and then we take care of that as well. Whether that's in product design, whether that's in product design, in the story itself, or some CSR issue or whatever it might be. So.
But speaking of friction points, now we have the ascendance of these voice search systems, the AI and machine learning backed systems, your Alexas, your Siris, that are sort of becoming intermediaries in the communication between the person and the brand.
Preference engines.
Where are we going from this, now, as if you're trying to build a brand and build this cult of a brand, now that a machine is going to be coming between you and the consumer.
Yeah. So the great thing is that if you agree that these 7 pieces of what we call primal code ping both the emotional and the rational touch points that we need as human beings so that we feel that we agree, belong, ultimately even prefer, then what we do is we take those pieces and we distribute it across media in sort of an omni-channel way so that you're distributed across social media, digital media, traditional media. You are surrounding people according to their preferences on their mobile devices and other devices, and through AI, and you do that through AI. So you need to find the computers that are doing that. And so in that way you create what we call deep belief networks. So that every day you are, or whenever the, depending on your category and your product and or service, of course, you ping people with, or feed people with the information that we want them to have in order to in order for us to be relevant and resonant, and remind them basically that they are a member of our community. And there are companies that are doing this already. And one of them is Amazon, another one is Apple, where every day, Apple's my favorite because I'm an Apple person, and every day I get pinged about, it's either about the new phone, right? Or it's about the old phone, or it's about the phone versus another phone, right? Or it's about Tim Cook, or it's about the new headquarters, or it's about Apple TV, yes or no, Apple cars, yes, are they going to do it or not going to do it? And there's one more that they've been doing lately, like, oh, there's a new Apple thing. I don't even know if I can talk about it. So so every day, because it's about, we're hearing about, oh, stock price, let's do that. So every day we're hearing about it from a financial point of view, or hearing about from product design or personality or headquarters, because it's from all these different tangents. We don't feel like it's the Energizer Bunny banging, banging, banging away at us and trying to feed us a message. We just feel that, oh, well, I'm an Apple person, and of course I want all this information. Which is different because I'm accepting this input, this incoming stream of information in ways that are, and I'm getting this sort of more dimensional and authentic and sort of organic feed that I'm accepting and I'm letting into my life, as opposed to traditional media, conventional media, where it was being banged at me.
It's, yeah, that's, you kind of made my point for me that I was going to ask in terms of this world of ad blockers and filters that we're in, just how much more necessary is it to have this cultish brand love to build this kind of relationship.
Yeah, and it's always been important because all this really boils down to is word of mouth, right? And in advertising, which I was in for decades, we used to say that, well, of course, the best form of advertising is word of mouth, knowing full well that word of mouth could not be measured. We couldn't measure the talk behind the water cooler, or we couldn't measure the conversations that people were having across the fence from one another, right? But now, today, those conversations we can measure those, you know, and we can tell what people are, read off what people are saying about us and so forth, word clouds and everything else. And so now that, and you can also apply metrics to the 7 pieces of primal code. So when you bundle that together, you have something that's very powerful and very personal at the same time.